Have you heard? Have you heard? The newest and best Bahamian resource for test preparation for BJCs and BGCSEs. Check us out on Facebook or at anansibahamas.com. Again, check us out on Facebook or at www.anansibahamas.com, where Mr. Ferguson is the COO. There are a lot of resources, especially for Bahamian students. Anansi Learning Technologies. Check us out. Welcome to the new Chemist. We're glad you're listening. Feel free to download this podcast on Spotify and Google Podcasts. Here on the new Chemist, we discuss chemistry, which simply put is the science of change, as well as careers, community, research, and COVID-19. We're happy you're tuning in. My guest this morning is Dr. Gary May. Thanks for joining me this morning. It is good to hear from you. Just briefly, I'll inform my audience about you. Dr. Gary S. May became University of California, Davis's 7th Chancellor on August 1st, 2017. He leads the most comprehensive campus in the University of California system with 4 colleges and 6 professional schools. An accomplished scholar and engineer, Dr. May came to UC Davis after a 3-decade career at the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. He was the dean of the Institute's College of Engineering, the largest and most diverse school of its kind in the nation. Prior to his appointment as dean, Dr. May was the Steve W. Chaddick Chair of Georgia Tech's School of Electrical and Computer Engineering. He also served as the executive assistant to the then Georgia Tech president, Chi Wayne Clark. As chancellor of one of the world's greatest public research universities, Gary S. May leads UC Davis as it advances its mission in several key areas. In 2015, President Barack Obama honored Dr. May with the Presidential Award for Excellence in STEM Mentoring. In September 2018, Dr. May was inducted into the National Academy of Engineering, one of the highest honors in the field, for his innovations in educational programs for underrepresented groups in engineering and his contributions to semiconductor manufacturing research. In April 2020, Dr. May was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences under the classification of Educational and Academic Leadership. Dr. May has won numerous honors for his research and was named Outstanding Engineer Alumnus of UC Berkeley, where he earned his master's and PhD degrees in electrical engineering and computer science. A prominent voice in higher education, Dr. May is married to Miss Michelle R. May, a software engineer with CNN. They have 2 grown daughters, Simone and Jordan. Please welcome Dr. May. Good afternoon, Dr. May. Thank you again for joining us on The New Chemist. Let's get started. Do you have any advice for those wanting to pursue the field you are currently working in?
First, David, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be the inaugural guest on your podcast. That's an honor for me.
Yes.
The advice I give for people who are interested in engineering is you have to find the part of the field, the discipline that you're passionate about. You have to really enjoy the mathematics and the science, but you have to really also find that discipline of engineering that makes you want to get out of bed every day and go to work and do something fulfilling. So that could be For my case, it was electrical engineering, but it could be biomedical, mechanical, aerospace, whatever it is, something that tugs at your fascination and makes you curious and makes you want to solve problems.
Okay, yeah, that's very good. So what has been some of the most beneficial advice you have received to date?
Well, I've gotten much advice over my life and my career. I think, starting with my parents, who, the old advice was, go do that homework, boy. And then we kind of progressed from there to, my dad used to tell me how important it was to have your own things, to be independent, to have your own opinions, to make up your own mind, and to be consistent with your views. Over the course of my career, I've gotten good advice about what jobs were good jobs, what jobs were not as attractive, how to stay successful, what networks were important to be a part of. In my current career, I've had mentors that have guided me in how to be, statesmanlike, how to be a better public speaker. Again, what associations are important for you to continue and others that are not as important because there are many demands on your time in this role. So I had some good advice about what organizations would be useful to be a part of and what other associations it's better to delegate. So I've gotten lots of good advice on many different topics.
Okay, that's very good. That's very good. Also, how have you maintained vision and teamwork in your environment?
Well, I just think teamwork is so important. No one is talented enough to accomplish all that they want to accomplish on their own.
That's very true.
And once you're humble enough to realize that, it lets you know that you need to put a good team around you. And I've been fortunate and blessed in most of my career to have been able to work with really talented people. And the other important part of that is to let those people do their jobs and let them be self-actualized and successful on their own, and don't feel like you have to micromanage them or be involved in every single decision or every aspect of every decision. You have to hire competent people and believe in their competence, right? And because whatever they do that's positive is going to reflect on you in a positive way anyway. So let them go do that. You need to stay aware of what's going on, but you don't have to be involved in every intricacy of every decision.
Yeah, I agree. So, Dr. May, it's quite plain and clear that you have been successful as a pioneer in the field. So, how have you been so successful? What has complemented the most to your success?
David, I always say there's three aspects of anyone's success. Okay. One is, obviously some talent. You have to have some innate ability. The other is you have to work hard. You have to have a work ethic. You have to try to use that ability to accomplish something. And then the third aspect is the one that's the least in your control. Is you could call it luck. You could call it, serendipity. You could call it being blessed, but being in the right place at the right time is also a big part. And that's the part that a lot of really successful people don't want to admit, because no one likes to say I got here because I'm lucky, right? But the truth is, you could get hit by a bus, right, the next day. So there is some aspect of your success that really you had no responsibility for, and you have to be humble enough to admit that.
That's true. Humility is very important. So amidst all of your responsibilities and accomplishments, how do you maintain a balanced life?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to my upbringing and trying to be grounded. But I'd have to say, a big part of my balance and well-roundedness is my family. My wife is a strong support system for me and my kids and my extended family, my mom and my sister and others. And family is a really important part of my life. And I try to make sure that I keep those folks that are supporting me happy and supported as well. And I always say that, in a career, you're juggling a lot of balls. And some of those balls are rubber, and if you drop it, it'll bounce back up. Some of those balls are glass, and if you drop it, it'll break. So you have to make sure that you're taking care of the important balls, if you will, that are helping to support you and help you be well-rounded.
Okay, so make sure you have your priorities straight. So in terms of your ideas and policies, what have been some of your most effective and impactful ideas to date?
Well, I'd have to let others judge how effective or impactful my ideas are.
That's true.
Some things I'm proud of I can talk about. I mean, in my research career, early on, we made some really fundamental contributions to how integrated circuits are manufactured and the use of AI in those processes, which garnered a lot of positive attention for me early in my career. And sort of in parallel with my research, I've always been interested in broadening participation in STEM fields for underrepresented students. And I think I've made some real good contributions in that area as well, which led to, eventually a presidential award a few years ago. And I think as an academic leader, I've had some contributions that I'm proud of in terms of having programs ranked very highly, producing many successful and talented graduates, raising lots of funds, whether it be philanthropy or research awards. So a lot of ideas contributed to those successful outcomes in those areas of my life.
I agree, and even the SURE program at Georgia Tech, which was very, very, very effective and instrumental, and I even benefited from that program as well. Yeah, so I'm grateful for it. How have you sought or found the right environment for you to thrive scientifically and intellectually? How did you find it? Or how are you seeking it?
Well, I think I always look for an environment that allows me to be my complete self. So I certainly have some intellectual challenges that I like to pursue. So you want to find a place where you can do your work and do your scholarship, but you also want to find an environment that allows you to be to relax and be yourself socially, to fulfill whatever kind of social justice imperatives you have. So allows you to work on things you think are the right thing to do, and allows you to be your own sort of authentic self, right? And so I thrive in environments where I don't feel like I have to pretend to be other than what I am. And sometimes you have to force the environment to accept that. As I've grown older, I've become much more comfortable in my skin, and I don't sort of look for an environment. I just sort of bend the environment to my will. But but it's harder to do that when you're younger and still kind of figuring things out.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good advice. Be your authentic self. Don't put on a mask.
It's much healthier to be your authentic. It's easy for one. I always tell people, the only person I'm good at being is me, so I shouldn't try to be anybody else. It's mentally much healthier and allows you to be much more effective, I think.
Yeah, it's true, because at the end of the day, you are responsible for you, and the best person you can be is yourself. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. So, how have you been adaptive and creative? What specific ways can you come to mind immediately? What specific ways have you been adaptive or creative in the field of science?
Well, I think what I like to do is look for analogies. And what I mean by that is if I see something in the natural world, I try to adapt that to something that I'm working on scientifically. So I mentioned the AI, the semiconductor manufacturing work that we did. I was kind of fascinated early in my career with neural networks and how the brain works and all those sorts of things. And I tried to see if there are ways that you could use some of those approaches in how manufacturing could be done more efficiently. and had some success with that. So I think the overall broader answer to the question is my creativity, I think, is stimulated by sort of observing my environment and drawing connections between what I observe in the environment and what I'm working on at the moment. So, and then also listening to smart people, reading smart people's work, and trying to figure out if I could use what other people have already figured out.
That's very good. Very good. Also, Dean May, also Chancellor May. Another question I have is, how do you maintain view of the bigger picture in your career and in your life in general? When you've encountered challenges or obstacles, or how do you maintain view of the bigger picture?
Well, part of it is going back to the humility that I mentioned earlier. Just, I'm a spiritual person. I do pray and go to church and those sorts of things. And what it does is gives me some sense of things that are greater than myself. And so when I am faced with adversity, I think that, this is not something too big. I'm put here for a reason. This can't be too big for me to handle it. And two, adversity builds your character. Everyone's going to face it. You got to learn from it. It's like in business, they talk about fast failure. You fail fast, but you learn from it. You don't repeat it. So you don't, although adversity doesn't always feel good, often doesn't feel good when you're going through it. When you reflect on it, going back, you try to figure out what you can learn from that experience and how you can apply it going forward.
Yeah, that's very true. One of the things I've heard about is, reflecting on your actions and not just going about doing. As well, you've made a lot of impact in the field of education, a lot of impact. So specifically to those who want to make a similar impact in that specific field, what advice would you give to those, like especially those who are pursuing careers in academia, or as professors or deans or administrators? What advice would you give them specifically?
Well, I think in academic leadership, we're going to start there. The important thing is to be able to find fulfillment in other people's success, right? So, early in my career, it's much more about being an individual contributor and, establishing a track record and getting recognition and award, et cetera. But in leadership, that stuff is not as important anymore. It's a nice thing if I get an award, but really it's much nicer if I provide an environment here at UC Davis where our students or our faculty or our community, people in our community can be successful. So you have to kind of switch gears on your sense of what makes you, what charges you up. And so I couldn't be happier than I am when I see someone here get a big award or do something that's notable because we provided an environment that allowed them to be successful, whether that be laboratory space or funding or some sort of enrichment program or encouragement in that way. And that's where I get fulfillment now.
Okay. Wow, that's good. Yeah, I agree. It's the idea in which you move beyond focusing on yourself and trying to help other people as well, develop themselves. So what have been your long-standing interests, the overarching theme, if you had to sum it up in short, what would be your long-standing interests in the field of science, if you had to sum it up in short?
Oh, wow, that's hard to do it in short. I think, I was a kid. I loved, I had a chemistry set. I had erector sets and Legos and all those sorts of things that kind of sparked my interest in science and engineering. I've always wanted to figure out how do things work and how can I make them work better, if you have to sum it up in a short, pithy sentence.
Okay.
And that includes, people. I try to figure out what motivates people, what helps them in their own pursuits, and how can I assist them in achieving those pursuits.
Now, as well, you mentioned how you chose electrical engineering as a field to major in.
Yeah.
To be more specific, why did you choose that field? What led you to choose that? What made it click? What did it click with you, or what made you choose that?
Well,
Or encourage you to choose it?
It was a path, I guess, that I was on because I had been in programs. First of all, you take these various aptitude tests as a kid, and they tell you you're good in this, you're good in that. So I was good in math and science. They said engineering would be a possible career for me. I did a program in high school called Develop Engineering Students. It's a summer program that was sponsored by McDonnell Douglas in St. Louis, my hometown, which is now Boeing. But anyway, I did that program and got a chance to see what engineers did in their day-to-day operations, and got some mentoring for the engineers there, which led me to select that career. And now the specific discipline of electrical versus some other engineering discipline was much more serendipitous than you might think. I mentioned I had chemistry, said I thought about chemical engineering, thought about mechanical. I had done these Heathkit radios as a kid, where you actually put together the coils and antennas and various pieces and power sources to make a real radio. So that was the interest in electronics. But I feel like I could have done any discipline in engineering and had some fulfillment or success. I just decided to just pick electrical kind of more on a whim than anything else, but it worked out okay for me.
Yeah, I would say so too. Also, I remember reading about you doing research in semiconductors.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you choose semiconductors to do your research in?
So this is going to sound funny, but when I was taking on my EE classes as an undergrad, the ones that were most challenging for me were the integrated circuit and semiconductor physics classes. And so I gravitated toward not the ones that were easier for me, but the ones that were challenging. And that's where I wanted to meet that challenge. That's where I ended up in semiconductors.
Okay. Wow. That's very good. It's very interesting. Also, Chancellor May, I would ask this last question. Amidst all of the things that are transpiring in the world today, what keeps you going? What keeps you encouraged? What keeps you optimistic?
Well, I mentioned being a spiritual person, so I have a firm commitment in trying to make things better. That helps me keep going. I want to build a better world for my family and for my broader community. I always say I have 3 things I want to do every day: learn something, help somebody, and make the world a better place. So I try to keep that going every day. And I am an optimist, so I do think we can make things better. Times like this, it's hard to see that because there's so much negative going on. But I am encouraged by some of the small things I see. People starting to really focus on social justice more than I've seen in my lifetime. I find that encouraging. I don't think, obviously we have a long way to go, but so you look for little things that make you feel more optimistic, and that keeps me going.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you, Dr. May, for your time. I really appreciate having you on this podcast.
My pleasure, David. Thanks for having me. Good luck with the podcast.
Yes, sir. Thanks for listening. We're glad you were able to tune into this podcast. Once again, this is The New Chemist, where we discuss chemistry, which simply put is the science of change, as well as the other sciences, careers, community, research, and COVID-19. Thanks again for listening. Note, the views on this podcast represent those of my guests and I.